Hello everybody and welcome back to RP1. We are going to pick up right where we left off in the last episode, and we're going to start off by making a few changes to the rocket that we used previously to satisfy a contract, and then we're going to continue on, do an X-plane flight, and then after that we are going to start the first contract in our early satellites program. We're going to start by taking this required contract for the suborbital research program, and that's to take a small biological capsule up to 100 kilometers with 35 units of sounding rocket payload. So we're going to open up the Peeper 3, which is the rocket we used in the last episode, and we're going to get another parachute on it to hopefully help it survive re-entry. We were having a lot of problems completing this contract this time around. We're not going to focus on this, but I do want to show that we rebuilt the Peeper from the ground up to accommodate the new types of tank that we had unlocked, which is the isogrid tank. It's more expensive, but it weighs significantly less. Therefore, we can get a lot better performance out of our vehicle. When the body of it weighs less, it can go farther and faster. So we are redesigning the Peeper 3. It's going to become the Peeper 4. And then soon it will become outdated with the rocket that we are going to build in the later half of this episode, the Icarus 1. So, yeah, we've got quite a lot to do today. But I'm pretty happy with this. It's a relatively short episode. We're going to be working on some more stuff in the next episode as well. I'm very excited to continue on this progress. We're working our way towards satellites and going fully orbit, so I'm excited for that. We need to change the wings a little bit. The center of mass and the center of lift were not exactly ideal, so we're going to make this. The best way to test is to completely empty the utilization of your fuel and make sure that your center of lift is behind that. So we're going to name this the Peeper 4, check our stagings, and we're going to go ahead and simulate it, see how it runs. With this series of rockets, I was having a tremendous difficulty keeping the payload intact, and my camera often exploded. The biological capsule would survive, so I'm keeping the camera on there just in the hopes that whenever I launch it for real, it will survive as well. The biological capsule, that's why we needed the parachute on top. That seems to have been surviving well enough to fit the contract, but nonetheless, we are going to add an SRB to the top of this facing in reverse. And when we get to our apoapsis, we are going to try to fire it, and hopefully that'll slow us down a little bit and give us a better descent. Just wanted to show this real fast. I caught a storm going on at nighttime. Unfortunately, we weren't able to really see what was going on. I was hoping for some lightning, but we never got it. But yeah, I thought that was pretty fun, and so I wanted to share with you guys. This is part of the RSS Reborn mod, which requires black racks volumetric clouds. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and bring our Kerbal into the clouds. We are going to be air launching our X-plane. Amanda Bennett, our intrepid pilot, will be launching today in this early morning-ish, afternoon-ish time. I can't remember what time we launched, but I have to really quickly bring up the Waypoints Manager mod and plot in a waypoint because there is not a native waypoint for the KSC runway. There is for the KSC, but won't line you up with the runway, and having a waypoint that will line you up with the runway is very helpful. So because I spent all that time pre-flight trying to get the waypoint set up, I didn't have my autopilot on, so struggling with the aerodynamics there until I got that activated, and then I activated my XLR-11 engine. And we just need to get to 12.5 kilometers in an X-plane, and we're already at 11.5, so this should be fairly easy. We're just going to put on our cruise flight controller and bring ourselves up there. And there we go. We have already completed it, apparently. So all we need to do now is land safely and recover the crew and vessel. So we're going to play in IVA mode for a little bit. This is the Warbird's cockpit. I'm mostly familiar with it, but I cannot for the life of me remember where the light switch is, so we'll fumble around for that for a little while. But our engine burns out. We only had a little bit of fuel to begin with because this is a rocket plane, not a jet plane. So it was expected that we would run out. Looking around, there's lights here somewhere. Easier to tell when the sun is a little higher. You have a little more light in the cockpit. I guess I could have done a roll, but I don't want to risk Amanda Bennett any more than I have to. So we get the engine failure notification on our screen, and that's just typical, understandable, because we have an engine flame out. But nothing to worry about. We still have plenty of momentum and plenty of lift, so we can just kind of glide our way into the KSC. We are fairly far away, a little bit closer than we were going to be, but still not ideal. There is a strong possibility that we're going to have to land in the water, but all we can really do is kind of glide our way as far as possible and make sure we keep up the momentum so we don't stall out and come plummeting down. I haven't been using my joystick that much in this series. I would like to, but some of the missions are just a little too important to rely on my own piloting skills, and it's a little less realistic, but flying by keyboard can be a little more precise at times. Most of the time, actually. But here we are, dipping below the clouds. Don't have too much of a choice. We are kind of coming down fairly fast. But as we check our mission log, all we have to do is land it safely. We get extra confidence if we, or reputation, one of the two, if we land it at the KSC on a runway, but we don't lose any confidence by splashing down. So as long as we can keep the capsule and the Kerbal alive, we will successfully complete this mission. I have parachutes to slow myself down here. They were on the wrong stage, so that's what you saw me do right before I went into cinematic mode, was adjust them to be their own stage. But now there's nothing left to do except physics warp forward and watch the plane come down, hopefully trying to keep my nose at a better angle so I'm not plummeting too quickly. Having a nice look at some of the cloud shapes above us and the different layers and levels of clouds. It's nice. It makes flying so much more enjoyable than just having a straight blue sky. And the volumetric aspects of the RSS Reborn makes it just so immersive. But anyways, I forget to hit my parachutes until way too late. And we were coming down at over 120 meters per second. Not comfortable in the slightest. However, our cockpit survives. Amanda Bennett survives. She is not passed out. Our engine does not survive, however, and we break part of our body, but everything else is good. I decided to do a normal recovery. Normally you would use the KCT menu, but we don't need to save any part of that plane because it is now obsolete as we move on to the next contract. So here we are taking the downrange 6000 contract. It's an optional one of the early satellite programs, but significantly farther than anything we've done so far. So we're going to need to build something bigger than we've ever built before, at least in this playthrough. So we're going to start off by taking a Peeper rocket, and we're going to build from there. So let's get rid of this payload because there's no need to have the biological experiments. We're just going downrange, and it's significantly downrange, so there is no expectation of being able to bring these pieces back. So let's go ahead and add on the sounding payload. We only need, I believe, 75 units of it. I could be wrong, I'll have to check that at another point, but there we are. We got our sounding payloads. We're going to change this. This is no longer the Peeper. I play around with the idea of just calling it the Lifter Vehicle 1, but we go with a more ominous title of the Icarus 1. That is from Greek mythology, of the man who flew too close to the sun in search of joy instead of freedom. But today we are going to put this thing to work, and we are going to try to go downrange. So let's first build this. Let's simulate it. It worked out fairly well, but we are going to need to make this more of a bumper rocket than a V2. So let's go ahead and put on a decoupler here. We're going to pick the GDPC or some combination of those letters. This SRB right here has a long burn time, so I've been enjoying it for my more complicated upper stages. We're going to use the Aerobee engine with the AJ10 configuration. We're going to use the IsoGrid tank once again with a 400 millimeter diameter. And we're going to add our avionics on top, make it a cone, then add the battery necessary, and then readjust the shape. So that's all looking good. We are going to need to move the sounding payload up to this part of the rocket, but we will do that in a little bit. So now I'm just checking my staging, moving things around because it just makes no sense when you build it from the bottom up like this. So here's where I realize that I need to adjust that. So I take the decoupler off that lower stage because we no longer need to decouple it. And we're going to resize the sounding payload to fit the new diameter. There we go. So just once again taking a look at our staging, and everything looks great. Going to extend out the body of our upper stage so that way we can burn the Aerobee engine for the length of time that it needs to be. Our center of lift and center of mass is looking good. Our control of the near Earth core of the lower stage looks good. We're adding our experiments into the science core of the top. And let's go ahead and simulate, change around our battery of the V2 part, the Icarus lifter. And it was a great simulation, so we are going to go ahead and get ourselves putting this into program. So we're going to scrap the Peeper 4 that we had in line, and we're going to modify our launch vehicle, our launch complex to accommodate this new rocket, because we want to put these out as soon as possible and as quickly as possible, or as many as possible. So now that we skipped ahead, our launch complex is complete. Nothing else really happened during that time. So let's go ahead and choose the right launch complex. We're going to tool our rocket. It doesn't take too much off the cost, about $300, but anything is everything. So we put about 3 of those into production, and then I realized, oh, we had unlocked the next node of science, so I could actually upgrade these engines. So we're going to cancel all 3 of those rockets, and then we're going to put in another 3 with the new engine. I could have added an extra 7 seconds on the burn time because you get a free 7 seconds with every engine due to spool up time. However, I didn't think about it, and since the engine rated for 141, I just left it. So here we are, launching early in the morning, at the break of dawn. Screen will be fairly dark for first couple 30 seconds of flight, but it will lighten up once we break the cloud layer. So this rocket takes off relatively slowly. Seen faster, but it does pick up speed well enough. The flight path that we normally take is every 25 meters per second. We pitch down 1 degree. But currently we're ignoring that for the sake of a glorious sight. So we finally get some light as we break the cloud layers and we look at the landscape, the airscape surrounding us. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the delta V stats and as part of the orbit information so you can get a better view of the timing of everything. If you're not familiar with reading these numbers, what you can see in the delta V stats at the very bottom, excuse me, we're doing a quick cinematic, there we go. In the very bottom, you see the 60 seconds, 59 seconds. That's our current stage. Once that reaches 0, or if our engine has a failure, then that engine will stop. So we're timing our burns and our staging according to that. We only need to get into space 140 kilometers of height, and primarily what we want is distance here. So once we hit 140 kilometers, as you can see in the orbit info to the left, the second line down, we now passed it, so we are going to point ourselves horizontally at 0 degrees, right at the horizon, and burn off the last of our fuel, the 18 seconds, to push ourselves as forward as possible. We take the time to spin. Sorry about the shaking of the camera. There's a setting I need to change, and I'll try to do that before the next recording. But we spin up, and that gives us our upper stage spin stabilization, which will keep it pointed on target. So the thing I like about this SRB is it burns for quite a while, much longer than any of the other SRBs that we've had, which only burn for like 3 or 4 seconds, requires very fast acting. This gives us plenty of time to coast and turn on our engine. We no longer need as long to spool up the engine, actually just a mere less than a second. However, I spool it up that early because we start to lose momentum with that type of SRB. And if I waited until the last second to turn it on, we wouldn't be going forward as much as we would be slowing down, which would cause ullage in that stage. So when using the SRB and the ARB, it's better to hot stage your ARB earlier than it needs and just spend that extra time fighting against that pull. It's good, but don't stage it too early, otherwise the SRB will launch right back into your ARB and cause you to spin out. So some things I learned from many tests of this. If you're interested in seeing the tests of these things, see the thought process and the build process, I have some news for you, which I will be discussing later. But here we are. We have main engine cutoff. No science to be gained. I'm going to leave that up, but I don't believe we actually get any science from these launches. It's just a matter of completing the contract. We get a momentary glimpse that is actually Mercury. I don't know what the lower planet is, but it's blue, so I'd imagine Uranus or Neptune. We're going to time warp our way downrange and see how far we get. So our record in this series so far has been 5,000 meters, or 5,000 kilometers. Which is right at the edge of the other continent. So here we are, crossing over part of Africa. or Western Africa. Now we're going over Central Africa. Very well clearing the 5,000 kilometer mark. Here's Madagascar, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And now we are reaching the twilight of the other side of the planet. We've gone from the crack of dawn to the break of dusk. Complete 180. And as you can see in the top right, that contract is now green. We have completed the downrange milestone of 6,000 kilometers. Easily cleared it, in my opinion. So we're just going to follow this until it breaks up in the atmosphere. There's no need to recover it, which is why we don't want to include any biological experiments or anything else like that. This isn't for science, this is purely to say that we can. So we head off into darkness, but we get to see a nice little sunset as we go. And just like that, the craft is done, but the milestones have been achieved. And if we look here into our mission stats, we actually covered 39,000 kilometers, or 39 kilometers, so 390? Something like that. We needed 6, we covered that many. So I'm very excited to see what the Icarus 1 can become once we start upgrading it with better technology. But that is going to be for another episode, and this is where I'm going to leave this one. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP1. If you did, please consider giving me a like, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.